Okay, so recently I started reading philosophy a lot more seriously as opposed to just listening to other people talk about philosophy and then me basically regurgitating whatever information and knowledge they had about philosophy and telling my friends, oh, I heard someone say this, I heard someone say that. And it was mainly just motivated to me wanting to do further research and just get further knowledge for the sake of these videos. While I do always say that I don't want to sell you guys a bad bill of goods and you should take what I say with a grain of salt, it doesn't mean that I should completely ignore the responsibility of making sure that I'm well informed about things that I talk about and things that I want to talk about. But also outside of that, I realized as well that philosophy is genuinely just an interesting thing to get into. So for a quick story time, what happened was I was on the internet, I was looking up some bits of philosophy to start reading off into, stumbled onto Reddit, read a book, it got a link to a website, I think it was an article or paper about the idea of perfectionism. And then from there, I read what I needed to read from there. And then I moved on. I found myself a few philosophy books to go through. Right now, I'm going through Sophie's World. The reason why I chose that one was because I was suggested to choose that one by ChatGPT. And while I'm not always one to fully believe AI and trust it with my life, I feel like when it came to this, it was not really the worst of ideas. It wasn't really too complicated for an AI to do to give me beginner philosophy books to go into. Eventually, I do want to get to a point where I can read beyond good and evil and be able to have conversations about that. But for now, we have to bring into what this video is kind of about and also the idea that you just have to start somewhere. And now that I've had a few bits and pieces of philosophy into my head, a few of the ideas that currently are juggling in my head is the idea of us putting value towards certain things, us trying to be the best human beings possible, and what that means from the subjective sense, but also from the objective sense. With that, I do talk about that article I read where they talked about this idea of perfectionism, and as human beings, we try to pursue being perfect, but not perfect in the sense that we are completely without flaws, but down to the idea that if we could give life the title of a game, let's say life is a game for you and me, and we get a scorecard, and being perfect is just trying to hit the highest score possible for our own life. I think now to do that, there are specific goals we have to reach, there are specific actions we have to complete, and there's a specific kind of person that we have to become in order for us to objectively say, and even to some extent subjectively say, that this is the best life I could have possibly lived, and this is the highest score I could possibly get for a life. And I was going through that, and then they spoke about how when we're trying to characterize this kind of game of life, you think about things that are pretty obvious and pretty easy for us to say as a society that are really good for us to do. Things like, just for random examples, saying please and thank you, helping people who need to be helped, and all of that. But it also spoke about this idea that sometimes when you want to benefit your own life, there could be circumstances where you need to basically put down the value of someone else's life. Not in the sense that they're less valuable as a human being, but like in the idea of that scorecard. You have to do something that may drop down their score to increase the score of yours. And that, from my understanding, that's just the idea of selfishness. But when I say these words, I'm not really speaking about what this means, what this doesn't mean, that and that. Like I'm not trying to put any like implicit meanings into the words. I'm just using them because they're the best ones I can think of. On the opposite side of the spectrum of being selfish, there's this idea that we should just think about doing things for the collective, even if it means that our lives become less meaningful to us or we get a lower score in our lives. If we can just improve the score of the lives of those around us at that cost, and that is still worthwhile. And in the long run, it gets us a higher score at the end of our life. So this idea of basically the idea like, should we be just purely self-serving, completely rational, only think about ourselves, or should we think about the group and think about, oh, what am I going to do or what can I do to help Peter live a better life, and what can I do to help Samantha live a better life, kind of thing. Right now on the spectrum, I'm on the other side of it. I know when it comes to extreme points, we always like to move towards the middle because we get the best of both worlds. And even in that sense, I think there's a lot of thinking behind why we always average towards the middle and whether that's always a good thing to do. I think once we get into conversations about that, that's when we think about, oh, politics this, politics that, and also morality this, morality that. But for me, I lean more towards the idea that I feel like my life is a lot more fruitful. My life is a lot more joyful and great to look at when I know that I'm helping other people live more meaningful meaningful lives. I'm giving a positive impact on the lives of other people. That doesn't say that I do absolutely anything and everything for another person. To some extent, there are points in time where I'll value and I'll prioritize my own needs as opposed to another person's need. But when it comes to that theory of perfectionism and the idea that we try to chase the best life possible, I think we really need to think about where we stand. And not to say that either side is good or bad, because when it comes to me, my own personal idea and philosophy about good and bad is that it always feels pretty relative to what society agrees upon and the majority of society agrees upon a specific time. Because I've had conversations with people before about how the things we consider heinous right now, back in the day, they weren't really considered to be so bad or so immoral. Of course, things have changed. We've grown up as people, we've grown up as a society, and we understand what benefits us and what doesn't benefit us a little bit better. But at the same time, I also think that as a society and as people in general, we are still in the process of learning and realizing further what's good and what's bad for society to pursue. And of course, we're going to have to put that knowledge into future generations. But when it comes to philosophy, I guess this video has just moved into me speaking about that idea of how do you get the perfect life. But another thing as well is reading Sophie's World. I realized like being a philosopher, as the way that I interpret it now, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to go somewhere and get a philosophy degree or get a philosophy certification. I think it depends on the types of goals you have with your philosophy, but I think the barrier to entry for philosophy is not as high as we'd assume it to be. I think to some extent, each and every one of us can be a philosopher. A lot more of us are philosophers more than we realize. The reason why I say that is because my definition of philosophy is just the idea of just questioning things, thinking about what you see around you and asking yourself, why is something the way that it is? And trying to go down that road yourself in your own time and thinking about maybe this is why we do this, maybe this is why we do that. Just for the sake of me having more things to talk to you guys about, I will go in further depth on that when it comes to another video I'm going to make. For now, I just want to give you guys a bit of a teaser. So if you want to see further chats on that in the next video, please do hit the notification button so that you guys are notified when it comes out. But yeah, I think to some extent we're all philosophers so long as we can look at our world and we can think about what we see in our world. We can think about, oh, why is this the case? How was this made? How did we get to this conclusion? And what could this mean? What could we use this and that for? And even sometimes internally, maybe some of us are very self-introspective. We think about the mistakes we've made and the glories that we've achieved, and we ask ourselves, how did I get here? Why did I do this? Why did I do that? And how can I stop myself from doing that again or from making this mistake again? So in that sense, I think so long as we're able to just think about things beyond the surface level, to think about things beyond what we're presented, I think in that sense, we already have that ability to be a philosopher. Not the kind of person that could maybe one day write out a completely new theory about why we do things and why human behavior is the way that it is. Or maybe you find out that Earth and just human beings and just living is just an entire code base made on an alien's computer. I'm not talking about things like that. Maybe one of you in the audience will end up doing something like that, but I'm not expecting it. And again, not in a negative way, but I'm not speaking as if most of you guys are going to do that. So when it comes to starting the journey of philosophy and just having a conversation about what I think about philosophy and that philosophy of perfectionism, that's what I have for you guys. Of course, I am going to make another video going into further depth about why I think we're philosophers or why I think just having philosophical thinking is a good thing, but that's going to be in a video separate from this one. Because I don't want to bait and switch you guys and leave you guys on a cliffhanger, I will make sure that that video is released on the same day as this one. So if you want to see that, I will link it immediately. But of course, until I see you then, until I see you whenever in this busy life of ours, I hope you have a good one.